U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper met with South Korea's Foreign Minister Kyung-wha and Defense Minister Kyeong-doo in Seoul today. A number of bilateral issues were discussed, including North Korea and the transfer of wartime operational control. The new U.S. defense chief said South Korea is the linchpin of peace in Northeast Asia, also stressing the ironclad South Korea-U.S. alliance. Much attention was focused on whether Esper would bring up the issue of increasing South Korea's share of defense costs, but not much was revealed about that. For further discussions on this issue, Dr. Myong-hyun, research fellow at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies, joins me in the studio tonight. It's always good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
U.S. President Trump, a few days earlier, said that South Korea should pay substantially more for defense costs. And following his remarks, all eyes were on whether Mark Esper would bring that issue to the table today during the defense talks. But not much was revealed on that. Why?
Well, clearly, we know that President Trump's, one of the chief obsessions of President Trump is about increasing the burden sharing on the part of the allies of the United States. And South Korea and Japan and Germany and other countries fall squarely into that category right now. And so in that sense, I think, it was natural for President Trump to bring that up through his tweet, coinciding with the first-time visit of the newly appointed U.S. Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper. But on the other hand, though, when it comes to concrete negotiation on the defense burden sharing, that's actually been wrapped up earlier this year, and it's been agreed upon on both sides that the South Korea would pay United States around $1 billion US this year, and then but just for the course of this year, and then this figure could change with further negotiations around this time next year. So right now we are still under under this an agreement that's been reached earlier this year. So sure, the President Trump can express his willingness or a desire to see South Korea or Japan or U.S. allies to put up more for its own defense. But on the other hand, at the staff level, including Secretary of Defense, clearly it's already been done this year. So clearly, I think, for Secretary of Defense, Esper, there are more pressing matters for him to discuss with the allies in the Pacific area. And chief among them probably is to discuss the ongoing situation in the Middle East with the Strait of Hormuz, as well as the ongoing the negotiation with North Korea.
Now, South Korea's Defense Minister Kyeong-doo, during his opening statement, said that Japan's trade curbs against South Korea are undermining the South Korea-U.S. Japan trilateral security ties. But Mark Esper didn't make specific comments on that or the hot-button issue of GSOMIA, the Seoul-Tokyo bilateral military information sharing pact. But do you think there was a discussion on GSOMIA that perhaps weren't revealed to the press?
Well, I'm pretty confident that the issue of the ongoing spat between Japan and South Korea was brought up into the discussion between the two defense ministers. Because I think the South Korean side wanted to discuss this quite clearly with the American counterpart. But then we know that the official position of the United States government about this ongoing tension between the U.S. key allies here in this region is one of a neutral position. One of engagement, but not of active meddling or intervention. So I think, officially, it was very obvious or natural for the Secretary of Defense Esper to express or not to express any strong a message about the ongoing situation between Japan and South Korea. But on the other hand, I think behind the scenes, and I think the United States quietly working with the two countries to resolve this ongoing tension, because if this tension is allowed to fester even more, then clearly it's going to have a material impact on the negotiation with North Korea. And from what we have seen a couple of weeks ago with the overflight of the Chinese and Russian warplanes in the East Sea, this creates a gap for the surrounding countries to exploit further to increase the gap between the two allies here in the East Asia. So definitely there's a pressing need on the part of Washington to intervene.
Now, other issues that also garnered much attention prior to today's defense talks was Esper Mark's recent claims on the deployment of ground-launched intermediate-range missiles in Asia, as well as South Korea's participation in U.S.-led coalition in the Strait of Hormuz. But again, they were not brought up and not much was revealed on those two issues either. But what do you think it is that the U.S. wants the most from South Korea at this critical juncture?
I think, I mean, even though the hot button issue right now is the INF treaty, the treaty to ban the intermediate range missiles that the United States just left from, and then there are speculations that the United States is going to redeploy or develop those missiles and deploy them in Asian countries sooner rather than later. But then I think that's more like a medium-term concern for the United States. A more pressing concern, of the political nature too, is to create a grand coalition of allies to participate in the joint patrol operation in the Strait of Hormuz in the Middle East. And I think there are mentions already in the foreign media about almost confirmed participation by South Korea and these operations in the Middle East. So I think if that's the case, if South Korea has already expressed willingness to participate in the operations, then there's no need for Secretary Esper to comment on it any further.
Now, Esper also mentioned that progress has been made towards the conditions-based transition of the wartime operational control of the Combined Forces Command to a South Korean commander. He said this shows the strength, that trust between the two allies that no adversaries can match. Can you give us an update on how things are on the UPCON front?
Well, clearly the UPCON transfer of wartime operational control back to South Korea from the United States has been discussed by the two sides for a while, actually, for many, many years. And then it was agreed back in 2014 that the South Korea would receive back the wartime operational control of the South Korean forces from the Combined Forces Command by mid-2020. But then what underlie the assumption back then that behind this early or like a 10-year like a period of a returning process was that North Korea wouldn't be achieving this high level of WMD development. But then what we have seen so far since 2014 is that North Korea has become a de facto nuclear power much sooner than anybody had expected. So this has affected our calculations regarding the speed of return of the wartime operational control. And this is actually having an impact on the ongoing discussion between, not just between Seoul and Washington, but between the two Koreas. Because President Moon right now, the President Moon's administration actually promised to receive back the wartime operational control sooner than it was planned, which was the mid-2020. But then because North Korea has developed, has showcased also like a more increased and augmented long-range missile capability, and each believed that North Korea has many more nuclear warheads than one had expected that North Korea would develop back in the 2014. So I think South Korea would have to achieve a higher level of a deterrence in order to get the operational control back, and that's not really forthcoming anytime soon. So there's there's some concern on the part of Washington and some experts here in South Korea that President Moon's plan to get the operational control by mid-20 or before the end of his term in 2022, it's probably not warranted. So there's a little bit of tension, but then I think the two sides will try to achieve the return of operational control as soon as possible. But then I think that will entail a lot more effort on the part of South Korea.
Now, speaking of North Korea's nuclear and missile development, North Korea has claimed that the projectiles it launched on Tuesday were its new tactical guided missiles. And in a rare move, North Korea also showed a video of the missile destroying targets. It also boasted how the missiles flew right over the capital area, right over Pyongyang, and to precisely hit the targeted islet in the East Sea. How do you analyze these claims?
Well, this is clearly a showcasing of North Korea's missile capability. This is a tactical missile that they tested this time. It's actually probably a copy of the Russian missile called Iskander. And I think North Korea is using this to showcase its capability to reach beyond the capital region in South Korea. So far, the biggest concern on the part of South Korea and the United States in defending South Korea from North Korea was the existence of a long-range missile artillery in North Korea. And the understanding was that the range of those long-range artillery was between 40 to 60 kilometers. now North Korea, by showcasing the existence of these intermediate range tactical missiles, is showing that they can reach beyond the capital region. And actually, those missiles, the range of those missiles include the entire South Korea. So in that sense, I think North Korea is showing that now it has a long-range, intermediate range missile capability that includes entire South Korea, and with the precision which they showcase with the latest test, they can attack any a target in South Korea at will with high level of precision. So this is a very threatening move on the part of North Korea.
Now, North Korea also unveiled a photo of Kim Jong-un, who oversaw the launches, with a group of missile developers as well as high-ranking North Korean officials. What can we read from this picture or the unveiling of this picture?
Well, whenever Kim Jong-un makes his move and then shows up in official pictures alongside his senior officials, there's a political message in it. And, obviously, logically speaking, if North Korea just wanted to develop this capability and didn't want to showcase it, they could have done so. But the fact is, the matter is that they chose to showcase this and then, figure Kim Jong-un right in the middle of the picture. So it clearly trying to send a political message to Seoul and Washington that if this test goes beyond the military purpose, this is a test to show to South Korea and the United States that North Korean military is becoming better and better despite the sanctions, and as long as and the reason is that because right now the negotiation between Washington and Pyongyang is at an impasse, is clearly giving North Korea more time to develop this kind of capabilities. So essentially what North Korea is saying through this messaging is that if United States doesn't engage in North Korea in a negotiations in a way that gratifies the Pyongyang, North Korea will keep developing multiple different ways of threatening military capabilities.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has said that Washington hopes to resume working-level nuclear talks with North Korea within the next 2 to 3 weeks, which is when the South Korea-U.S. joint military drills will be over. What kind of reaction do you expect from North Korea?
Well, I think what North Koreans are waiting to hear from Washington is not so much about its willingness to have a meeting. That's already been confirmed in the three-way meeting in Panmunjom between President Trump and President Moon and Kim Jong-un. But then what North Korea really wants to hear from Washington is a messaging about the change of attitude on the part of Washington that's going to be more friendly towards North Korea, just as North Korea had wanted, which is a more relaxed way of pressuring North Korea in achieving denuclearization, and also step-by-step negotiation approach. And so far, we're not hearing this from Washington, and then it's likely that North Korea is going to react not in a positive way.
Now, the new U.S. Defense Chief Mark Esper said that the U.S. and its allies will firmly implement UN sanctions that are in place on North Korea until North Korea takes actions for complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. Do you think today's remarks will perhaps provoke North Korea and make it fire more missiles?
That's quite possible. I think what Secretary Esper has said in his statement is essentially that the campaign of maximum pressure will go on until North Korea essentially changes position regarding denuclearization, or more technically speaking, until North Korea offers more than Yongbyon nuclear complex as part of its nuclear denuclearization offer. So clearly, that's the same messaging that we heard back in Hanoi, which led to the breakdown of the talks. So, this confirms again the North Korean suspicion that the United States is not serious about negotiating with Pyongyang. So, I think it's really likely to irritate North Koreans. But on the other hand, the North Koreans have launched many missiles already, and then right now maybe there's no need for them to engage in further military provocations. Rather, they might have shifted to a diplomatic phase where they're going to issue even more threatening statements, but without accompanying action.
And one last question before I let you go tonight. We only have about less than a minute left. In the joint statement released following the defense talks today, there was no condemnation on North Korea's recent missile launches. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the U.S. administration is trying to be consistent with what President Trump has been saying about missile launches or testing by North Korea. President Trump has stated that those missile tests that the North Korea has been carrying out in the last months those are like very normal events carried out by any normal nation. So essentially, downgraded the meaning of the provocations and then minimize the impact of it. So it's really difficult for any Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State to contradict what President Trump has said. So I think that's the reason why the condemnation didn't figure in the joint statement.
Thank you, Dr. Goh, for your analysis tonight.
My pleasure.
And that does it for this edition of News in Depth. From all of us here at Arirang, thank you for watching and have a great weekend.